My name is Ravinder Singh Bhalla. I am the mayor of the city of Hoboken, and my story began at St. Mary's Hospital in Passaic, New Jersey on May 10th, 1973, which was the day I was born. It's a birthday I share with my daughter. I'm the younger of two brothers. Grew up in a small apartment in West Paterson, what's now known as Woodland Park. My parents' journey to this country and even preceding that, they are from the Indian subcontinent, what's now Pakistan. And I recall my father, during the partition, had a family in Lahore, India, and crossing with his brothers and his mother, and coming very close to not making it past the border. Was actually separated from my grandfather for a number of years. Settled in first Anandpur Sahib and then in Amritsar. My mother also, her family came from what's now Pakistan. They actually came to Indore, which is in Madhya Pradesh. And I remember spending my summers in India with my grandparents, my cousins, and have great memories every year spending time in India with my family. Growing up in New Jersey as Indian American definitely had its challenges. For example, the town we grew up, Montville Township, was not very diverse at that time. I recall being in grade school and being the darkest skinned person in my class. Kids would call me the N-word, subject to school bullying. It was really sort of a test of character. Back in those days, there were not any anti-bullying laws in place. There weren't protocols, teachers weren't trained, so you're kind of left on your own. I served as 18 years as a civil rights attorney, trying to defend people who were victims of discrimination, racial profiling, bias crimes, things of that nature. But that might have been born out of my experience as a minority growing up in a majority white community in New Jersey. Parents told us that being Indian American is something to be proud of. Going back to India was an experience that we enjoyed, that we tried to embrace, and also being a Sikh is something that is not something to shy away from, but it's part of our identity as well, and it's something to be proud of. One story that's interesting I remember my father telling me is when he first came to this country, he came to study at Penn State University to do a PhD in physics, and he landed at Kennedy Airport and was driven by another college student from Kennedy Airport to the college campus in Penn State. And as they approached the college campus and were about to meet the other students, his friend said, before we go onto campus and before you meet our circle of friends, we have to make one stop at the barber shop. And he said, why is that? He said, well, because you need to remove your turban and cut your hair so you kind of, you don't want to stand out, you want to make sure you fit in with the other students. So that's not why my father came to this country. He came to America because he believed that diversity would be appreciated and respected. Things like religious expression, religious freedom was part of our value system in America. So he actually made that choice not to take up that offer, which I think was very impactful. But growing up in America, what really, just getting back to being a minority, what really helped my brother and I is, interestingly, sports. My mother was trying to identify how we can be more involved or integrated into society, and she tells me the story of a Jewish mother telling him, sign him up for baseball and sign him up for soccer. And all of a sudden, my mom was a soccer mom and I was a Yankees fan, and we're living the American dream. You to be on their team because you know how to play sport as good or better than other people. So it's that kind of meritocracy that sports created was something that we learned a lot from. So we, just as two young boys, played a lot of tennis and basketball and soccer and baseball, and that was something that helped level the playing field, so to speak, in terms of equality issues. I do remember an incident at Montville Township High School where this was in the mid-'80s. I may be dating myself, but the federal government had designated Martin Luther King Jr. Day as a national holiday, which was an act of Congress that was signed by the president at the time in the mid-'80s, and the Board of Education at Montville Township High School decided not to honor that day. Usually you honor those holidays by giving kids a day off of school for Lincoln's birthday or Washington's birthday. They made this decision not to recognize Martin Luther King Jr. Day, which made me ask, why not? So even though I sit here as mayor today, my first experience in the public square was as a high school student going to a Board of Education meeting to speak during the public portion and ask my Board of Education members, why aren't we commemorating the legacy of Dr. King? And no one really had an answer that I found to make sense. I was told that we don't honor him with a day off because it would be a better honor if students were working on that day, which didn't make sense because we were taking days off for other people, but not for this person. We were also told that there were little to no African Americans in Montville Township, so there was no need. My position was that the opposite was true. If there is an absence of a certain minority, it's a good thing to try to educate people about those minorities. So the absence of African Americans or a smaller population within Montville Township, I thought was all the more reason to honor that day. So I started rallying students at the high school to try to get a commitment to honor that day. What we did get was the opportunity to create a very nice display in the rotunda of Montville Township High School. Unfortunately, within weeks, it was vandalized. People sprayed the N-word with spray paint, which I think kind of validated some of the concerns that I was raising about the need to teach diversity, especially in non-diverse communities, and make sure that people understand that, as I think Dr. King said, that we might have come from different places, but we're all in the same boat now, and we need to understand each other better. So that was my upbringing in Montville Township in New Jersey. Around the dinner table, we would talk about politics, the politics of the day, presidential debates. I'm known in the family as being the one who speaks very quickly because everyone in my family has something to say. So, when I can get a word in edgewise, I'll say it, but I'm known as a better listener. My father, this was around 1982, so I must have been about 11 at that time. He started his own business. My father is a scientist who worked for Westinghouse for a good 20 years. During his time at Westinghouse, he developed about 40 patents for the production of what's called a high-pressure sodium street lamp. So these are the street lamps that you see when you go on highways, stadiums, parking lots. My father invented what's called the arc tube, which creates the light at a lower energy cost with the greater efficiency. My father, in the truest sense, came to this country with not more than $10 in his pocket, believed that if you work hard and believe in your dreams, that the sky's the limit. He became an inventor, an entrepreneur, started his own business in New Jersey, and still runs that business to this day. So in that way, I really do think my father is a great example to me as well, and I think to other Indian Americans as somebody who embodies the American dream in the sense that you can be proud of your heritage, proud of who you are, and be a successful American as well. My Masiji lived in Walnut Creek, California. My cousins had gone to Cal Berkeley, UC Berkeley. I applied there and was admitted to Cal Berkeley. Finished a degree in political psychology in Berkeley, which is a mix of political science, psychology, and sociology. After that, I went to the London School of Economics. At the London School of Economics, I studied public administration and public policy, and then spent 3 years at Tulane University in New Orleans, where I finished my JD degree, Juris Doctor degree. And the love of my life, Navneet Bindia Bhalla, we actually met at a Starbucks on Oxford Street in England. Not completely by chance, but it was a suggestion of my parents to meet this young woman. And I had business in London, so I fit that meeting into a day-long schedule, and then we really connected. And the next, actually later that evening, I asked her if she would grab dinner with me, and fortunately she said yes, and kept in touch. Eventually got her from London to Hoboken, so I clearly married up in the relationship. And we now have 2 children, been married for 14 years. Coming to Hoboken as a 25-year-old out of law school, I didn't know much about politics per se, or really as a young 20-something, didn't really care too much, frankly. Having gone to the London School of Economics and Tulane, I was focused on my law career and issues that were more of an international nature, what's happening in different parts of the world, international conflict, domestic policies. That's what kind of occupied my mind when it came to politics and government. But with the course of time, I began to realize that the decisions that impact me the most aren't necessarily made by my member of Congress, but they're really made by my local school board member, my council member, whoever sits on the planning board, the local mayor, whatever the case may be. So at that time, I started really focusing in a little bit more on what was happening locally on the ground in Hoboken, and became a little bit more attuned to that as well. During that same time, I started my own law practice here in Hoboken, New Jersey, as a solo practitioner. I'd spent 5 years at a law firm in Newark, got training by one of the best criminal defense trial attorneys in the state, and then I realized that professionally, in order to take that next step, to be the one who's not doing the back office work, but in court trying cases, I needed to start my own law firm. Did it with no clients, but just a desk and a fax machine and a phone line and a letterhead and a business card and a dream. And somehow, with hard work, no salary for the first 6 months. One of my first clients was a member of the Hoboken City Council. Actually, there were 2 individuals in the Hoboken City Council who retained my services as a lawyer because 4 council members were being sued by the mayor in 2005 for refusing to adopt a budget. So that caused a citywide crisis. It caused a shutdown of all non-essential government services, and it was a very high-profile case in terms of the newspapers, the TV covering Hoboken, what this showdown in Hoboken, what was going to happen in court. And as a young lawyer with a budding practice, it was a good case for me to take on because it was very, very high profile. So that's how I sort of got to understand in a very intimate level how Hoboken politics and government worked by representing those 2 council members in that court matter. Through that process, I became a lot more involved in Hoboken. I ended up volunteering on that council member's campaign for mayor. She ran for mayor in 2005 and became more civically engaged in politics. And a lot of Indian Americans, when they decide to get involved in politics, they run for U.S. Senate as their first office or U.S. Congress. I thought that the adage of Tip O'Neill that all politics is local was a lot more insightful. So I started hyper-local and ran for what's called Democratic Committee Man. Being a Democratic Committee Man is the most hyper-local form of politics that you can really engage in. So Hoboken, for example, has 6 wards or districts. Within those 6 wards or districts, there are about 6 wards. So there are 6 wards. Within those wards, there are about 5 to 7 districts. Within those districts, there's 1 male and 1 female committee person. So that totals 80 committee people citywide. So there are 80 elected positions available citywide at the very local level. So I decided to run for committee person in my district and ward. The function of a committee man or a committee woman is to take those local things that a mayor or a city council member might not find important enough to be on their radar, but is important to the neighborhood, and bring it to the council member. Senator Booker and I developed a relationship and a friendship through service I did for his campaign in terms of volunteer work. He had decided to support then Senator Barack Obama when he was campaigning to be president of the United States. So being part of Senator Booker's team, so to speak, I joined in that support, not really thinking that he had too much of a chance to be successful, but out of loyalty to then Mayor Booker, I supported Senator Obama. After the senator won the Iowa caucus, we became really inspired and invigorated. And I actually shut my law firm down for a full week. My brother and I drove to New Hampshire and knocked on doors for a full week during the New Hampshire primaries. And that was really my first experience actually campaigning, knocking on doors in the middle of winter for then Senator Obama. Later on after that, my wife and I were knocking on doors in Pennsylvania with our 2-year-old daughter for the general election in October of 2008. And when he was victorious, it really made me feel like if America is ready for its first black president, we should be ready for a sick councilman or in Hoboken. So that was a very inspirational moment in history that gave me a lot of encouragement that, you know, if we can go this far, then certainly, you know, maybe Hoboken might be ready for a councilman of South Asian descent. Also on the local level, I was focusing, as I said earlier, on what was happening locally, and our city was being completely mismanaged fiscally. We had overspent our budget by $10 million in 1 year. Property taxes rose 70% in 1 year, the municipal portion, and things had gotten so bad that the state of New Jersey took over Hoboken's finances. We had the distinction of being the only municipality, aside from Camden, in the state of New Jersey that was so poorly managed that the state of New Jersey had to come in and say, you don't know what you're doing. We're going to have to manage your city for you. That created a lot of frustration amongst my wife and I, as well as the entire community. There was a strong anti-incumbent feeling in the air. People felt like we needed, you know, fresh blood, new energy. I looked at the council members that were on the city council and felt that, you know, I could do as good a job, if not better, than any of these other council members. So I actually thought about running for office. The combination of what was happening locally with the mismanagement of Hoboken's finances and what was happening nationally when we were seeing a black president, that confluence made me think that, hey, I'm in my mid-30s, maybe I should get off the sidelines and try to make a difference. And that's really what my wife encouraged me to do. She said, you know, we have a young daughter, we're in our mid-30s, if you're ever gonna run for office, now's the time where you've got the bandwidth to actually do that. So she was instrumental in helping me take that leap of faith to run for office. People said to me very bluntly, you know, how many Sikhs live in Hoboken? And I said, well, you know, my wife and brother are here. And they said, okay, well, how many Indian Americans live in Hoboken? And I said, well, There's some, but I'm not sure how many. They said, well, how many Asians are in Hoboken? I said, it's probably about 2% of the population. So they said, well, you're not Italian, you're not Latino, you're not Irish, you're not a senior, you're not from labor. Where are you going to get your votes? Who's going to vote for you? So that made me wonder whether or not my ethnic and religious identity would actually be a liability for me to succeed as a candidate for elective office. And that was, that's always been an ongoing question throughout my life, is whether or not my identity as a South Asian and as a Sikh is an asset or an impediment to success. One person said that, look, you wear a turban and beard, and that will not go unnoticed, and that was not meant to be a compliment. But I did what every good Indian American does. You roll up your sleeves, you work hard, you work harder than anyone else, and you have faith in your beliefs. So, we spent day in and day out talking to people at bus stops, knocking on doors, talking to people at train stations, getting the word out. And I think what was instrumental was the debates. We had live televised debates where really anyone who was voting would be watching those debates. And it was after those debates where people in the street would come to me and say, wow, you actually made a lot of sense. And I think that broke the perception barrier when they look at me visually and then hear what I have to say by way of a policy argument. That kind of turned a corner where I felt like it had a very positive impact. People having the opportunity to see me perform in a debate. So in that year, out of 12 candidates, I was the highest vote getter amongst 12 candidates for office. As a first-time candidate, I was able to get more votes than the Latinos and the Italians and so on and so forth. So I think it just kind of shows that, at least in Hoboken, people care a lot more about your ability to deliver on things that matter: open space, combating flooding, recreation, fiscal responsibility. If you can deliver a message and show that you're the most qualified to produce results on those matters, it doesn't matter who you are. Predecessor, Mayor Dawn Zimmer, decided not to seek a third term and had asked me to run for mayor. It's not something that I had contemplated at all. It threw me for quite a shock, and it was obviously a serious decision, but it was something that I felt I had to consider. When any mayor asked you to continue her work or continue her legacy, you have to consider that. For Hoboken is that it can be a place where you can come as a bachelor, as I did as a 25-year-old, get married, have kids, and not have to make that choice when your kids are ready for school. Do I go off to the suburbs or do I stay in Hoboken? We want to make Hoboken a place where families feel they can stay here for the long term, set roots, and retire if they want to. And the job of local government is to really create those conditions so people don't have to make a choice between staying and leaving. And that's why I thought running for mayor would be a worthy endeavor, because it would give me an opportunity to continue to create those conditions, whether it's better schools, housing stock that could accommodate family housing, or anything else to make Hoboken a less transient place. But people said, I got tagged. There was a whispering campaign that Councilman Bhalla, although he seems very qualified, having served on the city council for 8 years, the word was unelectable, because Hoboken was not ready for an Indian American mayor, and Hoboken was not ready for a mayor with a turban and a beard. So that was the knock on me, that there was this segment of Hoboken that would just never vote for me. My identity, my racial identity, my national origin as an Indian American was a liability, that I was unelectable. And I didn't know if that was true or not, but I can tell you this. from the day I announced my campaign for mayor on June 20th, 2017, until the day of the election on November 7th, 2017, I did not take a single day off. Worked 7 days a week, nonstop through the entire summer, knocked on thousands upon thousands upon thousands of doors, not just myself. My wife was instrumental, could not have done anything without my wife's help. Winning an election is always a team effort. It takes not just one person, but we really had an army of volunteers who were committed to winning this election. And I think the fact that I'm sitting here today shows that there's absolutely no conflict in your identity as an Indian American and your ability to succeed as an elected official. So my message for the next generation is multifaceted. First, always believe in the beauty of your dreams, as Eleanor Roosevelt once said. That's really what this country is about. Never lose faith and be proud of who you are. What I've learned is that in this country, your possibilities and your opportunities to achieve your dreams are limitless. Never lose faith, but also persist. There are going to be both successes and failures along your journey of life. Don't get discouraged if there's a setback. Realize that every setback can always be a learning experience. I've had many setbacks in my life, but I think the larger picture is what's important in terms of your own life journey. And always, I like to be optimistic. Every day is a new day. Every day is a chance to learn. Every day is a chance to improve. And every day is a chance to be a better person.